Alright, so we are just off the cuff of a very historic episode of AEW Dynamite. An episode of AEW Dynamite that saw them overtake WCW Nitro for the most episodes of a wrestling show on a Turner network. And as well as that, it would feature another big decision that AEW had to make regarding the future of the AEW World title scene and the Death Riders. There's so much to talk about from this show and the post-show fallout and all the drama, of course, as always with AEW. So like the video as we talk about the 16th of April AEW Dynamite Spring Breakthru live from Boston, Massachusetts, as the show opened with an Owen Hart Women's Tournament semi-final matchup with the CEO Mercedes Mone returning home to Boston and taking on Athena for the first time in All Elite Wrestling. And other than my issue with the fact that I think this should have been the main event aside, this match was very obviously absolutely fantastic and lived up to the hype that it was being built up to. To me, this match felt big going into it, and these two more than delivered, but they delivered in a way where it definitely wasn't the full amount of them, and that goes into my theory that this is going to be a multi-month feud and multi-match feud between these two women. There's definitely more to explore here. It was a 20-minute plus barn burner between these two, which is crazy to say that AEW is now having 20-minute plus women's openers on the show. I remember when the women's division got 2 minutes per show, period. So this is definitely a big step forward from AEW, and it's Mercedes Mone who gets the win here, picking up the victory over Athena to advance to the finals of the Owen Hart Women's Tournament, and she will face either Jamie Hayter or Chris Statlander at Double or Nothing. And then after the match, very interestingly, she has a face-off with Toni Storm. So maybe she's winning the tournament and then facing Toni at All In. Maybe I'm wrong about her and Athena being a long multi-month feud. And so there's definitely a lot of unpredictability with this Owen Hart Women's Tournament. If it were up to me, I would have Jamie Hayter beat Chris Statlander and then defeat Mercedes Mone at Double or Nothing, maybe with some Athena interference to help continue that feud. And then Toni can face Jamie Hayter for the title at All In, with Jamie Hayter holding Toni Storm accountable for putting her on the shelf for over a year. I think that could be a very interesting storyline. I also do think Chris Statlander could also work in this role, finally getting her win over Mercedes in the Owen Hart Cup final thanks to Athena, a little help from her, and would be a great candidate to dethrone Toni Storm of the belt at All In. I think Chris Statlander would be fantastic as women's champion. But yeah, we get some backstage antics with Hangman Adam Page and the Young Bucks and Okada. This might be one of the main things I don't really care for in AEW right now, is a new Elite Law storyline. I just can't really say I care for that in 2025. We've kind of done and seen everything with the Elite in terms of any new law and storyline with them. But Hangman Page is then out next for his match in the Owen Hart Men's Tournament in the quarterfinals against the Wild Card, which would end up being the walking weapon Josh Alexander, who was crossed over coming from TNA to AEW. I say that as if he's still signed to TNA. No, he obviously left TNA and is now All Elite with AEW. A very interesting signing. I'm really gonna be interested to see where he fits in with AEW. I thought he could have been a very good fit for WWE as well, and I'm very surprised he did actually go to AEW in the end. But this is a good match between the two here, and obviously Hangman Page does pick up the victory here. It makes the most storyline sense with Hangman Page advancing in this tournament. Post-match though, Josh Alexander immediately attacks Adam Page and joins the Don Callis family, which I liked. I liked that they've immediately given him some sort of direction following the loss. And yeah, I guess it's just a case of Josh Alexander not kind of getting stuck in a limbo or vortex with the Don Callis family and making sure they keep things fresh with him. I have seen he has got a match tonight for AEW, so they're following up quick, which is nice to see. Up next, the Hurt Syndicate are up against the Gates of Agony for the AEW World Tag Team Championships. This was a nice hoss match. The Hurt Syndicate are great. They're very over, and they obviously destroy and dismantle the Gates of Agony to retain the belts once again. My only issue with the Hurt Business, man, is who beats these guys. No one has really been built up outside of them to really stand against them, because the Hurt Syndicate have been built up as absolute world killers, and they're one of the few acts in AEW that are able to remain very, very extremely over as they are without having the most incredible work rate matches. It just works with the Hurt Syndicate. I don't know why the Hurt Business in WWE ever broke up, because we already knew this information. But then after the match, there's more antics with MJF trying to get himself in with the Hurt Syndicate and trying to impress them. This is some of the best stuff from MJF in a long while. I did enjoy his short little feud with Hangman Page as well, but in terms of a long program, I'm really liking what I'm seeing with MJF and the Hurt Syndicate right now. He brings out a load of women and leaves them for the Hurt Syndicate to have a fun night with and a night out with the lovely ladies, which was just hilarious. Bobby Lashley and Shelton are a little hesitant around what MJF's motivations with all of this are, but MVP tells them to ease up a bit because they can use MJF to get what they want, and it's just business after all. Up next was another Owen Hart semi-final match, this time for the men's tournament. Will Ospreay against Konosuke Takeshita, and what can I say about this match, which I didn't really kind of already say about the Mercedes Mone Athena match, because this was kind of just the men's version of that. Just another amazing, heavy work rate, long match on the card for this Owen Hart tournament in the semi-finals between two of the best in-ring workers in their respective divisions. Yeah, Ospreay and Takeshita absolutely stole the show, blew the roof off the place, all those hyperbolic statements to say about a good match, you know what I'm talking about. Definitely better than their last meetings, which is hard to top because they've had some very good previous matches as well. But yeah, this was just an AEW classic right here. It gave off Grand Slam 2021 Omega versus Danielson vibes. My only thing I didn't like in the match was the back-to-back one kickouts, which, listen, I get the crowd reacted to them, so I'll allow it, obviously. But for me, it's just a pet peeve. I hate egregious near falls and egregious kickouts. And yeah, Will Ospreay gets the win here over Konosuke Takeshita in an unbelievable match, as he will go to the finals of the Owen Hart men's tournament. He will face either Adam Page or Kyle Fletcher at Double or Nothing, and I have to imagine that it's going to be Adam Page, right? Surely. Adam Page, Will Ospreay, first time ever, I believe it would be. Maybe I'm wrong on that. But let's not do Fletcher and Ospreay for the 7th time. Let's do Hangman Page and Ospreay, and either one of those men could easily win that match and face Mox at All In. But speaking of Jon Moxley and the Death Riders, it's time for them to defend their trios titles against the Opps. Now, obviously, the trios champions were Claudio, Wheeler Yuta, and Pac, but Pac is injured, so Jon Moxley will step up for him in this match here. And it's time to see if the Death Riders and their booking is gonna ruin what's been an amazing show. I said it for last week's Dynamite review, everything other than the Death Riders stuff was good, and the Death Riders stuff completely ruined the show, but that was at the start of the show. Now they're ending the show. Can they end the show in a horrible way? Well, no, actually not, because this might be the best thing the Death Riders have done so far in their run in AEW, other than the initial Bryan Danielson attack. As the Opps would actually also have to find someone to fill in for them, as Hook seemingly has a concussion or got injured. He was throwing up in the ring last week, so he's not here this week. And Powerhouse Hobbs is who will fill in for Hook and is part of the Opps now, seemingly. And yeah, this is a very appropriate replacement and a very good replacement. I'll explain why at the end of this match. But for this match, another great match on this card, and the very best of the Death Riders in-ring work so far in AEW for sure. I cannot stress it enough, I've said it already in recent videos, but just Samoa Joe's presence in the world title scene and around the Death Riders is just so helpful for that storyline and adds so much credibility to the fight against the Death Riders, because I actually believe that Samoa Joe and the Opps can actually hurt these guys. And sure enough, Samoa Joe would get the win for his team as he choked out Jon Moxley. Yes, he got the win on the world champion. Great way to give major credibility to Samoa Joe, and himself and Shibata and Powerhouse Hobbs are the new trios champions. Thank God, AEW actually did the right thing. They sent the fans home happy for what overall was a home run of an AEW Dynamite. I really cannot stress enough, this was an impressive episode of AEW Dynamite. And it comes after I think I was very disheartened with the AEW product following Dynasty and last week's episode, but this past episode of Collision and now this episode of Dynamite have instantly just recovered the product. I have to say, fair play to AEW on that. And I'm so happy to see the Trios titles free from the shackles of the Death Riders and on 3 guys that deserve to hold it. I definitely feel for Hook in this situation. I was super happy for him that he was potentially getting his Trios title moment, but Powerhouse Hobbs is a great choice for a replacement. Powerhouse Hobbs, since returning, has been very over with the AEW crowd, and many were calling for him to win the world title of Jon Moxley when they were having their match. People were calling for them to pivot even then, and after he lost, he kind of fell into the Jericho-verse for a bit, and it didn't seem like he would get his comeuppance over Jon Moxley, but sure enough, he kinda did here, as himself and the Opps have bested the Death Riders and won the Trios titles in a great match and a great show. And yeah, with that show, it means they officially overtake WCW Nitro for amount of episodes, officially outlasting Eric Bischoff's WCW run. And Eric Bischoff did discuss being surpassed by AEW Dynamite by saying, "I want to congratulate Tony Khan and his entire staff. This obviously means a lot to them, and congratulations. It does say a lot about Tony's commitment." Tony put his own money into this. You can judge the product. I can judge the product. I often have. I just don't watch it anymore. But the truth is, his vision, his dream, his money, his commitment, so congratulations. Because what he did isn't easy. No matter how anybody feels about the product, it wasn't easy and still isn't. So congratulations for your effort, and no, it doesn't bother me a bit. It doesn't mean anything to me. Well, it does to Tony and company, and I understand why. He put a lot of time and work and money, as I've just discussed, so good for them. But no, it doesn't bother me at all. A pretty nice statement from Eric Bischoff, as he does give his props to Tony Khan and AEW, but I will give some advice. Saying you're not bothered twice or 3 times or however many times does make it seem like you are quite bothered, I can't lie. But yeah, that puts to a close a pretty historic AEW Dynamite for AEW and crew. Yeah, a great episode of AEW to mark the milestone. I've got to say, it was a very good episode. Good main event, a fantastic opener, and very good matches all round on this card on the 16th of April episode of AEW Dynamite, as they officially overtook WCW Monday Nitro. But guys, let me know in the comments down below what you thought of this episode of AEW Dynamite and your thoughts on them overtaking WCW, and if the AEW World Title scene can be saved, because I truly think that Samoa Joe could potentially be the one now to save the AEW World Title potentially. Maybe it's him against Moxley for the world title at Double or Nothing. I mean, he choked him out. I would not mind at all for Samoa Joe being the one they pivot to, but once again, I really don't feel like AEW are pivoting the world title anytime soon. I really think they are holding out until Darby Allin comes back. We could definitely see a Jon Moxley Samoa Joe match on Dynamite in the future, but I don't think that Samoa Joe is going to win the title off of Jon Moxley. As much as I'd love to see that, but subscribe, notifications on so you never miss a video on the Top 10 Wrestling channel. I'll see you all in the next video. Goodbye, and keep on rolling.